afternoon. It's Sunday, March 1st. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left for the United States this morning to deliver what many consider a historic speech before Congress on Tuesday in a bid to stave off what he says is a bad nuclear deal between world powers and Iran. IBA's Eli Wogelanter has that story.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this morning that he is going to the United States as an emissary of all the citizens of Israel and the entire Jewish people. Speaking to reporters on the tarmac before boarding a plane for Washington, Netanyahu said that he would deliver his controversial speech to the U.S. Congress because I am greatly concerned about the security of the citizens of Israel, and I will do what is necessary in order to ensure our future. On the eve of his trip, Netanyahu visited the Western Wall last night for a moment of prayer. He told reporters that he respects U.S. President Barack Obama and that he believes in the strength of the relationship between Israel and the U.S. and in their strength to overcome differences of opinion, those that have been and those that will yet be. He strongly opposed the agreement being formulated with Iran and the major powers, which could endanger our very existence. In the face of this danger, we must unite and also explain the dangers stemming from this agreement to Israel, to the region, and to the world. Netanyahu's planned speech has come under much criticism in Israel and the United States. Political rival Isaac Herzog of the Zionist Union voiced his criticism again today, insisting that the trip was solely about the upcoming Israeli election on March 17th. Some 30 Democratic lawmakers out of 232 are planning on boycotting the speech, but the overwhelming majority of Congress will be attending.
We welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu to address the Congress. This is a very important time for us to hear from the Prime Minister. Many of us are concerned that the negotiations right now that are happening between the administration and Iran, that the agreement that is being come to will be insufficient because it is unacceptable for Iran to have nuclear weapons capability, and the only acceptable agreement is one that ends their program, is completely transparent and verifiable, and you don't need enriched uranium or underground facilities or plutonium reactor for peaceful nuclear powers.
Obama will not be meeting with Netanyahu in Washington, and other top officials like Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of State John Kerry will be out of the country. Senators and congressmen who oppose the deal on Iran are looking for ways to stop it.
Well, that is going to be the issue. I mean, March 24th is the deadline. What role the Senate's going to play? I would believe that the Senate should be in a position where they have to ratify it. And if not, then find ways, if the majority is opposed to it, to find ways to defund it or put a mechanism in place so they can't be enforced. Now, again, it may turn out to be a good agreement. Right now, I'm very skeptical of that, though. And again, that's why I would think that the president and Democratic leaders would welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu coming in to have a dialogue. So if he does have legitimate objections, if he does have questions to be raised, then raise them at this national level, so we can get this resolved. So rather than have the president come to an agreement with Iran, which we believe is bad, and then we have all the backlash from that after March 24th. So I'm very dubious about those people who are so opposed to Bibi Netanyahu coming here prior to the Iranian agreement.
Netanyahu is scheduled to arrive in Washington later today and deliver a speech to AIPAC's annual policy conference tomorrow that will focus on the strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship. He is scheduled to deliver his address to Congress at 11 o'clock Tuesday morning, Washington time, 6 p.m. in Israel. Afterward, Netanyahu is to have lunch with a bipartisan group of congressional leaders and will then fly back to Israel on Tuesday evening, arriving a few hours before the onset of Purim. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
Joining me now on the phone from Washington at the opening of the AIPAC conference is IBA Editor-in-Chief Steve Leibowitz. Steve, can you hear me?
I hear you, Laura.
Hi, Steve. Is there more of a buzz around the conference this year, or does it only appear that way in Israel?
You know, the delegates that come here, we're talking about 14,000 people from all over the United States, Jews and non-Jews. They are just very, very pro-Israel people. They're not talking about whether or not Bibi should come to Congress. There's no real buzz about that issue. The real issue is support for Israel in general. People are concerned about Israel's situation vis-a-vis Iran, of course, and as they are concerned about the situation of war and peace and about the Israeli economy. But they are not as politically wrapped up in whether or not this is the right time to come and to fight with Obama.
Steve, are the AIPAC delegates upset that this year a lower-level representative than usual from the Obama administration is coming to address the conference?
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens when Susan Rice speaks. She apparently is the representative that's going to come. It's not Joe Biden. It's not President Obama himself. But it has not done anything to dampen the spirits here. The place is, for the first time ever, AIPAC conference is sold out, and it's been sold out for weeks. The participation is record levels. People are first and foremost pro-Israel, and afterwards they'll talk among themselves, depending on whether the Democrats or Republicans, on whether or not the Democrat Obama is treating Bibi badly or not. It's not the central issue, though, that seems to be on people's minds.
Steve, do you feel that there's concern that Netanyahu's address to Congress will severely damage relationships with the United States? Is there that feeling there?
No, I think people mostly feel as though the relationship between the United States and Israel is so strong and so deep that it'll survive this. If there's some bad blood between the president and the Israeli prime minister, it'll blow over. If it doesn't blow over now, it'll blow over down the road. People here believe firmly that any American administration, the bottom line is that they have Israel's back. Whether they're right or not is something else, and we in Israel certainly have mixed feelings about that.
Do you feel that the tension between the Obama and Netanyahu administrations is being reflected at all in the American Jewish community?
I can't feel it. I mean, I have to say, everyone comes here with this big pro-Israel smile on their faces. Yes, they have criticism of different things about Israeli life, and they want things to be better and improved and so on. But no, I don't get any sense whatever that people are as concerned as we seem to be in Israel ahead of our elections. It's not a partisan feeling here. It's not like you get a feeling that there's pro-Bibi people or pro-Likud people and pro-Labor or Democrat versus Republican. People here just seem to be pro-Israel.
How much traction is the anti-Netanyahu campaign gaining in AIPAC?
I don't get a sense of any. I have to say, I expected to see more. I expected to see maybe people with buttons on or with stickers or organizing things. But, the sessions are just beginning now. So up until now, it's just been my impression. I haven't heard the actual discussions in the various committee meetings. And we're talking about dozens and dozens of breakout sessions that are taking place about so many different issues and aspects of Israel. So it'll be hard to get a sense of that also because there's so many different sessions going on at the same time. But right now, they're literally just beginning discussions at this hour. And up until now, my sense is just that everyone's here as a massive show of support for Israel in general.
Steve Leibowitz, thank you so much for joining us by phone, and we look forward to hearing more updates from you. Thanks so much.
As do I. Bye, Laura.
In other news, Iran's top nuclear negotiator, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, said that scaremongering by Netanyahu won't stop the Islamic Republic and world powers from reaching a final nuclear deal. Zarif said the world should not allow Netanyahu to undermine peace through falsification, propaganda, and creating an erroneous atmosphere. Zarif added that Netanyahu is opposed to any solution, and his planned speech in the U.S. Congress signifies his attempt to use an untrue issue and a fabricated crisis to cover up realities in the region, including the occupation and suppression of the Palestinian people, violation of rights of Palestinians, and continuation of invasive policies. U.S. President Barack Obama will veto a bill introduced in the U.S. Senate allowing Congress to weigh in on any deal the U.S. and other negotiating countries reach with Iran on its nuclear capabilities. The White House announced that the president has made it clear that now is not the time for Congress to pass additional legislation on Iran. The Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act would require to submit to Congress the text of any agreement within 5 days of concluding a final deal with Iran. The bill would also prohibit Obama from suspending or waiving sanctions on Tehran passed by Congress for 60 days after a deal. White House National Security Council spokeswoman Bernadette Meehan said the U.S. should give negotiators the best chance of success rather than complicating their efforts. Republican Senator Bob Corker, one of the bipartisan group of sponsors of the bill, said it was disappointing to think the president feels he is the only one who speaks for the citizens of the country. Hamas suffered another blow after an Egyptian court designated Hamas a terrorist group. The move came immediately after Egypt sentenced the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood to life in jail. We get more in this report from IBA's Ari O'Sullivan.
Suspected Hamas involvement in Islamist terrorist attacks against civilians and security forces in the Sinai was the main reason an Egyptian court has declared Hamas an illegal terrorist organization. Earlier this year, an Egyptian court ruled that Hamas's military wing, Izzadin al-Qassam, was a terrorist group. Now it has ruled against the entire organization, and this has greater consequences. The ruling against Hamas is part of the government of Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's crackdown on Islamists. The Islamic Brotherhood was outlawed after the army ousted Mohammed Morsi in 2013, and Hamas is an offshoot of that group. Shortly before the ruling on Hamas, the Egyptian court over the weekend sentenced Muslim Brotherhood's top leader, Mohammed Badi, to life in prison and sentenced others to death for inciting violence that led to the killing of protesters days before Morsi was ousted from power. Egypt is now the fourth country to declare Hamas a terrorist organization after Israel, the United States, and Canada. The ruling allows the government to quash any Hamas presence in Egypt and freeze their assets. Hamas officials reacted to the ruling, saying Egypt was evading its role toward the Palestinian cause and that it served the Israeli occupation. Hamas spokesman Fawzi Barhoum said the decision was shocking and dangerous. It also goes against the rules as it relates to the Israeli enemy as a friend and to the Hamas, the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian resistance as an enemy, he said. He added that it wouldn't harm Hamas and only contaminate the reputation of Egypt. Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip is mired in ruined infrastructure, collapsed economy, and destroyed tunnels, which once served as a lucrative lifeline to the Hamas rule. Hamas is jointly isolated by Israel and other Arab nations, and the reconciliation with Fatah is not working out, leaving them few options for patrons. The once allies of Shiite Iran and Hezbollah aren't so forthcoming anymore due to Hamas's backing of Sunni opposition to Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. With no aid, no cement, no material lifeline whatsoever to help it rehabilitate the Gaza Strip following this past summer's war with Israel, Hamas is now at a crossroads that could see it fall from power. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Following the violent protest during a campaign visit by Zionist union leaders Isaac Herzog and Tzipi Livni to the northern Arab town of Wadi Ara yesterday, when a fight broke out between the demonstrators and Arabs who support the party, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that this is more proof for those that still needed it, also for Herzog and Livni themselves, that some of the Israeli Arabs are not only enemies of the Zionist Union, but of Zionism as a whole. Lieberman added that just as Hamas was outlawed in Egypt, this is how we need to outlaw these extremist elements, take their Israeli citizenship, and remove them from the country. The protesters reportedly shouted at Herzog and Livni to leave the town and spat on those who defended them. An apparent attempted hit on Beitar Jerusalem Soccer Club owner Eli Tabib. He was shot outside his home in the Tel Aviv area suburb of Kfar Shmariau late last night. Tabib, who was previously the owner of the Hapoel Tel Aviv Soccer Club, sustained light wounds to his hands. Details of the investigation show that Tabib returned home after last night's game, in which his team beat Hapoel Petach Tikva. As he sat in his car prior to entering his house, a motorcycle carrying two people pulled up, which police believe had been following him. One of the men climbed off the bike, pulled out a gun, and fired 3 shots at the driver's side of the car, one of which hit Tabib in the hand. Tabib was able to reach a neighbor who called an ambulance. He was treated at Meir Hospital in Kfar Saba and released a few hours later. Another demonstration by Israel Chemical employees, this time today, outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. Some 200 workers arrived as part of an ongoing protest over the ICL Group's plan to fire hundreds of staff members from its Negev bromine factory at Ramat Chovav. The ICL management slammed the Histadrut labor union for supporting unreasonable staff demands, explaining that if changes are not carried out, the unprofitable plant will close down. The management called on the workers' representatives to return to the negotiation table to find a mutually agreeable way to keep the factory open. Danny Biton, the father of popular singer Eyal Golan, was convicted today in the Tel Aviv District Court on a plea bargain agreement. He will serve 2 years in prison for pressuring 3 minors into having sexual relations with him in return for invitations to Golan's residence and to events at which the singer was performing. Biton will also pay the three girls 50,000 shekels in damages. Golan was originally accused of involvement in the sex and drug parties, but following a much publicized investigation, was acquitted on all charges. Holding placards declaring "I'm not afraid," thousands of Russians marched in Moscow today in memory of Kremlin critic Boris Nemtsov, whose murder has widened a split in society that some say could threaten the country's future. Participants walked slowly, with many carrying portraits of Nemtsov, an opposition and deputy prime minister who was shot dead while walking home from a restaurant in central Moscow on Friday night. His murder has prompted deep soul-searching in a country where, for years after the Soviet Union collapsed, many yearned for the stability later brought by President Vladimir Putin. Some now fear his rule has become an autocracy. Putin has vowed to pursue those who killed Nemtsov, calling the murder a provocation. National investigators say they are pursuing several lines of inquiry, including the possibility that Nemtsov, a Jew, was killed by radical Islamists, or that the opposition murdered him to blacken Putin's name. Putin's opponents say such suggestions show the cynicism of Russia's leaders as they whip up nationalism, hatred, and anti-Western hysteria to rally support for his policies on Ukraine and deflect blame for an economic crisis. An independent political analyst said the murder was indicative of the atmosphere in Moscow, where criticizing the government was akin to being a criminal.
Although we don't know who committed the murder, but if you're talking about the atmosphere, the context in which it happened, I could say that Ukraine came to Moscow, or Donbass came to Moscow. The violence that we witness daily on our TV screens, the violence that's very frequently glorified by state propaganda, this violence could not but finally take root in Russia. I think in the short term the Russian opposition will be probably spurred into action by the murder of Boris Nemtsov. In the long term, I think it will have to struggle and to just actually keep existing for some time before the Russian society actually feels the need for alternative opinions. For now, there is very little of it, and we see it.
The German-based anti-Islam group Pegida held its first rally in Britain yesterday, sparking scuffles as police tried to keep the group away from counter-demonstrators. 5 people were arrested. Authorities said that some 400 people joined the Pegida rally in the northern town of Newcastle, while about 2,000 took part in the counter-demonstration. Police say the arrests were isolated and the event was largely peaceful. Pegida promotes fears that Europe is being overrun by Muslims. They operate mostly in Dresden and is trying to spread its influence through other cities and countries around Europe. The leader of the Liberty Political Party, Paul Weston, told the gathering yesterday that Muslims will become a majority in Britain in the coming decades and will take over the country if they are not challenged. Islamic groups in Britain accuse the government of demonizing the country's 2.7 million Muslim citizens. Back here at home in entertainment news, it's Boogie Woogie Madness. Pianist Sylvain Zing from Switzerland, considered as one of the best boogie woogie and blues pianists in the world, will be performing tomorrow night at the Jerusalem Theater as a guest of the Hot Jazz series. He's been dubbed the ambassador of boogie woogie, and rock and roll legend Chuck Berry calls him my blues brother. Zing has played in more than 30 countries since he began his professional music career. He will be joined on stage by 2 energetic and intoxicating world-renowned dancers as part of the performance. Zing will make his way to Herzliya, Modi'in, Tel Aviv, and Haifa later in the week. Get tired just watching them. Take a look at local finance. With no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week in the plus column. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. The weather forecast is calling for another drop in temperatures tomorrow, with chances of light local rain in the north of the country. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Erin Viner will be at this desk tomorrow. Please join her for more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.